Hey guys, Mad Dog here. I had a request from someone about how I make my trees. These right here. I cannot take credit for these. I actually found this on a couple different channels. There were a couple old timers that were showing how to make these trees out of furnace filters. If you don't know what a furnace filter is, your house furnace, if it's a hot air furnace, they have a filter inside, usually paper, but this one is from 3M, and it's this plastic fibery stuff, and it has this grit, some kind of a grit on there, and I guess it helps collect dust and larger particles through your furnace system. Anyways, this is the only one I could find. It was blue. Some of the other guys online can find green ones. I had tried, but I couldn't. That's okay, because you can spray paint this afterwards anyways, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do this. It's real simple, and actually it's one of the few things that I enjoy doing that's not super tedious with dioramas. Some things are more tedious than others, but for some reason I kind of like making these trees. You can make a whole bunch of them pretty quick. And whether you're doing dioramas or railroad models, scenery, whatever, it's actually very cheap and very quick to make, and I will show you that right now. So these are bamboo skewers, just wooden skewers. You can buy these pretty cheap, Dollar Tree probably, grocery stores, anywhere usually. They're very sharp, so be very careful. They are very sharp. If you're working with these, be careful how you store them and grab them, because you can poke yourself. Anyways, what I do is, this is the tree trunk. It depends on the scale too. This is usually good for like railroad model scales, probably like 1/64th, smaller than that. It depends on the tree size too. If you want to do some like scrub brushes and stuff, it's great for this. But you can always upgrade to a thicker dowel and just sharpen one end. So anyways, you need some of these. Just keep them full length. That's what I do. And then cut yourself a piece of the furnace filter that I showed you. And what you do is you cut them down to about 3 different sizes. Approximately, I don't measure them, but approximately your largest one would be maybe 2 inches, 1.75 inches. And then cut yourself a smaller diameter, which would be about 1.5 inches. And then an even smaller strip at about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch. And if you want to go nuts, you can cut one down about 1/2 inch, something like that. And then you want to cut them in squares. So just like I said, you don't have to measure, just eyeball it. It's not a huge deal. We're going for an irregular look anyways. The tree that I showed you right here, that's almost a little too perfect. It's a great for Christmas tree or something that's just kind of out in the middle of a scene. But if you look at real life pine trees or pine forests, you're not going to find too many of them that look like this. They're gonna be very straggly looking, because they don't get a lot of sunshine unless they're on the very edge of the forest. Then you'll find some of these, or if they're out in a field by themselves, you will find them looking like this. Or close to this, but typically you want to spread out the branches a lot more, and I'll make one like that just to show you what that would look like. So anyways, keep cutting these down to squares. And again, this is not my process. I found this thankfully on YouTube, and I thought it was awesome, because these little trees are not cheap to buy, as you can probably tell. I'm sure you've looked around, and some of the ones you buy are not that great either. So what I'm doing now is cutting off just the corners, just give it a little more of a roundish look. Doesn't have to be perfectly round. Just knock those corners off like I'm doing here. All right. So after you got the corners knocked off of all these, again, I have 3 or 4 different sizes here. It doesn't really matter. Just kind of, obviously, a tree will be bigger branches on the bottom, smaller on top. All right, so what you're going to do is you don't want to use this whole full thing like this. It'll look kind of ridiculous and cartoony. So separate them as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, nature isn't perfect and symmetrical. So rip yourself off some layers as best you can. So I find that I can only get maybe like 3 decent layers off of this, depending on the material, depending on, you know, the brand of filter you get. That's about all I get. If I try and get thinner than that, I usually mess them up. So about like that. And you want to do that for all the sizes, down to the big, down to the small. Just separate them all, just like this. Just kind of carefully tear them. It's not too hard, but try and keep it intact as much as you can. And if you get ones that are irregular, don't worry about it, because like I said, we don't want it to look perfect anyways. So anyways, I already cut a bunch, so I'm going to show you what I got. Let me see. So I got large, medium, small, and I think I might have cut some even smaller ones. Let me see. And there's no perfect science to this. Just do whatever you think is going to look good. So what I found works best. I tried hot glue. Don't do that. It is very messy. If you've worked with hot glue before, there is strings everywhere from the glue, and that drives me nuts. So what you want to do is put your first bottom layer on, which is going to be the widest part, the widest one. Slide it down there. This is going to be the top of the tree. So however big your tree is going to be, slide it down to approximately where your bottom set of branches are going to be. And I put a pretty good dollop of this gel tacky glue, and that seems to work really well for me. It dries crystal clear, and it has some body to it, so it'll stick to the branches or the filter pretty good. Alright, so you have a choice. You can keep going with another layer of the wider stuff, or you can start going down with the medium layer. I think I'll do that. I think I'm going to stack 2 medium layers here, and just slide it down into the glue so it touches, and keep the branches apart, something like that. And it doesn't matter if they're crooked, because that'll give some realism to it. But keep some space, because remember, we're going to be spray painting this, and we're also going to be adding some texture, some flocking to it. So you want to keep some open space. So again, another dab of glue, a healthy dab. And I'm going to put another layer on there, about the same thickness. And then the next one I'm going to drop down to the small. And another thing to think about is after this is all set, after it's all dry, we're going to go ahead and shape it with scissors. So it doesn't have to be perfect right now. We can make that adjustment after with scissors. Alright, I'm going to do another little one. And then remember those corners that we chopped off from when we shaped them? That's kind of a corner. Save those. Don't throw them out, because I found that it makes a perfect little top piece. And again, it'll be shaped with scissors after. See? Not too bad, huh? So we'll let that dry just a little bit before we spray it and trim it. So we'll trim it first and then we'll spray it. So I'll be right back. So here I'm making a tree that's a lot more spread apart, something that you would find in the middle of a pine forest. See how I'm keeping those branches spread apart a lot more? If you really look at forests around you that have conifers, pine trees, cedars, whatever, you're going to find that the very bottom of the tree, there's really nothing there. I mean, there's some little branches that broke off years ago, but it's way up at the top. You'll see where the existing branches are, because they're the ones that catch the sunlight, because they're usually crowded with other trees, so they need the sunlight to really fill out, and they usually don't. So I'm going to keep these branches on this particular setup further apart. I'll go for a medium one. And like I said on the last tree, don't worry too much about the shape of it at the moment, because we're gonna fix that with scissors as soon as we're done. If I can find my little ones here. There we go. I'm gonna put, usually the very top will be fairly full because that's where all the sunlight is hitting it. So you can crowd them a little bit at the top. And I'm going to throw one of those corner pieces on the top here, if my glue will cooperate. There we go. So you'll probably notice that probably resembles more of a realistic conifer, a realistic pine tree. Especially if you cut it down further and then you crowd these around with a bunch of others around it, it'll really look like a pine forest. With this much trunk showing, will really have a realistic look. So these are our two more Christmas tree looking and more, I would say, realistic looking. Again, this would look great if you're doing like urban scene, or if it's out in the middle of a field or something like that, or as long as it's not like right in a forest or the edge of a forest, it would work. Another thing these are great for is if it's in small scale, you can cut the trunk way down, and these can be like very small, like baby trees that are in the middle of the forest, which are starting to grow, but usually they don't make it because they're overcrowded. So, but you'll see in a pine forest, you will see some very small pine trees starting out this way, and then eventually once they grow taller, they lose all their bottom branches. So next step will be to trim these. This one's still a little wet with the glue, but I'm going to go for it anyways. Oops. Let me move some of my stuff out of the way. Alright, so a nice pair of scissors. So first I'm looking just to get rid of all the irregular little things that are sticking out. The little hairs, little fibers, whatever they are. And then what you can do is you can go in like this too, and don't be afraid to kind of take some chunks out of it, because especially if you're going to crowd this in with other trees, it'll look way more realistic. There. See? Not too bad. I know it's not symmetrical, that's not what I was looking for. And this one, we'll do a little bit of trimming. Get all these long straggly piece, especially in between the branches on this one. All the little fibers sticking out. You don't want that. That doesn't look very realistic, especially if you're doing some photography work with these miniatures. If you're doing really nice close-ups, you want it to look pretty real, so get a better picture that way, better it'll just look more realistic. There. I think I'm going to let that one go. I'm pretty happy with that. And it all comes together once you get the flock on it. It really starts to look awesome. So we'll let those dry. I'll be right back. So this is what I've been using. I got this at, it's called Magic Camouflage Spray Paint. A lot of hunters will use this for spraying some of their equipment, or if you just like the camo look, you can get this spray paint. It's olive drab. It's a flat oil-based paint. Very stinky, so use outdoors. Don't do it like I'm doing right now. I'm inside, but this is for demonstration purposes only. So what we're going to do is I have a paper bag underneath me, and I'm just going to go ahead and spray this just so you can see what it's going to look like. And get the trunk, get everything with it, doesn't matter. Ooh, that's strong. Getting kind of buzzy here. So this is the tree with just one coat. And again, if you can find the filters that are already green or yellow or something other than blue, it'd be easier, but blue's not too bad. It covers pretty easily. So, but that doesn't look too bad just painted, doesn't it? That might actually just fly if this was like way in the background in your railroad model display or something like that. I think that'd be actually fine, personally. Save yourself some flock. Anyways, let's spray the other one. And there's the other one. Not too bad, huh? Not bad with the green, just the paint. And again, after this is all said and done, I won't do this for you guys. You can figure that out on your own. But just paint the trunk, you know, a tree color. You know, usually I'll use mostly grays, black. Usually I'll mix them together and just kind of marbleize them, and something this small, black, some black with a little bit of white, and just mix it right on the trunk, and that looks pretty good. You can always add some texture to it with some sand, something like that. That would give it even some more realism. But this is such a small stick. You're not going to get a whole lot of texture on here, so I would just go with like a sand texture if you're going to do anything like that. So yeah. Anyways, next step. I'm going to do this now, but I usually wait until it's dry. But I'm going to spray it some spray adhesive. This happens to be Elmer's. It doesn't matter. I use different types, but a lot of these guys will use hairspray. I haven't used that technique, to be honest with you. It probably works awesome. I haven't tried it yet, but I usually just use spray glue. It's definitely more toxic, so maybe that's why hairspray is a better thing to use, but I trust glue more than I do hairspray, I guess. So anyways, okay. So I ran out of my own mixture. I like making my own flock. This stuff I got at Hobby Lobby. It is JTT Blended Tuft Green Blend, it's called. And it wasn't too bad. I paid $11 for this big thing, and I've done quite a few projects with it already, and it's lasted a while. But I'm kind of a tightwad when it comes to this hobby, because you can spend a lot of money really quickly. So I like to try and make my own. I'll show you guys how I do that too eventually. But anyways, just dump some into a container, because you don't want to waste it. You can put the extra back in the canister after. So we got the spray glue on here, let it tack up a little bit, and then just kind of spin it around and start covering it. Oops, I don't know if you can see that, I'm sorry. And I don't mind if some of it's not covered, because I want it to look like some of it's like bare branches. And then give it a couple taps, get the extras off. And if you're happy with that, that's a nice looking tree, isn't it? Alright, I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it that way. Another thing you can do, which I don't have, is you can, you can do it now, I guess. You can do another mist of spray, and then go with a slightly lighter color of flocking, just a little bit, and you can highlight like one side of the tree just a little tiny bit, and it'll look like the sun's hitting it. So that's another technique you can do. So let's spray this guy and see what this one looks like. Oops. And again, I am rushing this. I didn't let the glue dry, I didn't let the paint dry. It'll come out way better if you just kind of be patient with it. But I'm just doing this because I don't want to make an hour-long video for you guys. All right. And again, I'm just hitting the tops of the branches. I don't really. I mean, I guess I could tip the tree upside down and do the underside of the branches, but I don't know. I kind of like to see the fibers. Kind of has that branch look, and you know, I don't want to completely cover it with these pine needles per se, and because again, you look at a real pine tree, a lot of times there's a lot of branches that look kind of bare. So then give it a couple taps, and there is your more realistic forest tree, conifer, pine tree, cedar. Again, experiment with colors of flocking, make your own flocking, and then you can add different colors to that. Or you can, after it's dry, if you have an airbrush, you can try putting some different colors on there. I've done that before. You can even do it with a brush, with like a wash. Hit some of these branches with some gray. I did that in one of my dioramas. I painted some grays here and there because I wanted to make it look like there was more bare spots on the tree. And again, paint the trunk, and then you can clip it off with some snips when you're happy with the size of tree you're going for. If this is going to be a real tall guy or a short one, you know, that depends on you. And again, and this is another thing, don't put them in perfectly straight. because nature has a tendency to blow them sideways. If it's on a windy hill, they'll be leaning sideways, some of them, or maybe they got knocked down with some erosion or something like that, and the root system kind of slipped a little bit. So you'll have some that, you know, go this way or that way. Another thing I've done before is kind of just kind of break them and let it fall, and you have a freshly snapped off pine tree. So think about what happens in nature and trying to mimic that, and it really makes a difference in your dioramas. Anyways, this is Mad Dog, and I hope you guys have fun making some miniatures, and I will see you again. Thanks.